We'd like to say a good evening to everyone. It's good to have you tuned in with us for another Wednesday night Holt Street Church of Christ broadcast. This is our lesson for December 2021. As always, we're so thankful for those who continue to tune in with us on a weekly basis. We hope and trust you're gaining something from the lessons. We want to thank God for this avenue to be able to study another portion of His Word. We also want to invite all those out to be with us. Each Sunday morning, we're back in the building at 9 a.m. With our regular worship service. Also, if you're not able to come inside, we still have the parking lot service at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning as well. So we'd love to have you with us, but more preferably, we'd love if you were able to come in and be present with us inside at our worship service each Sunday morning. We want to continue to pray for our number who are sick and shut in. Those who are bereaved, want to continue to pray for them also. We want to thank everyone who participated last week and made our 66 homecoming what it was. We're so thankful to God for you and all those who labored so diligently in order to make these things possible that transpired on last week. Now, we've been studying a lesson on marriage, and we've been dealing primarily with the husband. On last week, we looked at why Paul gives us 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Many problems existed in the church at Corinth, and Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse number 31, he says, "And I show you a more excellent way." Now, what was the more excellent way? The more excellent way is 1 Corinthians 13, the way of love. Now, what I want us to do is, I want us to bear in mind what Paul means by using the word love in 1 Corinthians. The chapter is 13. Now, in our English language, the word love has a variety of meanings. We talk about romantic or sexual love. We talk about friendship and affection type love, and we even talk about a simple enthusiasm type of love. I may say, I love butter pecan ice cream. But also, we use the word love to show a deep concern for the well-being of other people. This is what Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians. The chapter is 13. Now, these differences of what love is or means can be confusing. But the beauty of the New Testament and us understanding that the New Testament was written originally in the Greek language, then the Greeks made sure that we knew, that we understand what Paul is saying in these texts, or in this text. A person might say, "I love you," but it might simply mean in a romantic way. And brethren, we need to understand that our wives are not just sexual objects. That is not what Paul is talking about when we look here as we discuss agape love and what agape is. We should love our spouses in a romantic way. We have Bible for that, and we'll look at that as the lessons progress. But we also need to realize that our primary concern is for the well-being of our spouse, not just to have that person as a sex object. And one of the greatest things and one of the major problems that I've found in marriage counseling with people, with couples, is that so many men just see their wives in the sexual arena and not truly in the agape arena. Now here's what we have. We've seen our word love in the English language, but now the Greeks took away all ambiguity for us, so there would be no obscurity about what love is. So we find this. The Greek language solves this for us because the Greeks had 3 words for love. The first one we want to discuss is the word Eros. And when we talk about Greeks, we look at Greek mythology. Even these people in Corinth believed in many types of gods. They didn't understand the one true God. We even see that in 1 Corinthians 8, as Paul talks about. Some still thought that there were gods many. But to those who were mature Christians knew there was only one God, the Father, above all and through all and in us all. So the Greeks solve any obscurity about love. So first one we have is Eros or Eros. And in Greek mythology, Eros was a mischievous god of love. Now I want you to see this because you've seen it numerous times, and I want to show you what it actually means. Eros was the child of Aphrodite, the goddess Aphrodite, in Greek mythology. And it was Eros that lit the flame of love in the hearts of the gods of man. And he was armed either with an arrow and a bow or a flame torch. Now, I know you're looking and you're thinking already, aren't you? And you're thinking about what's going to happen in February, aren't you? You ever heard the song, Cupid, draw back your bow and let your arrow go? The Roman name was Cupid or Amar. That's where we get our word erotic. So see, Eros is not used, though, my friend, in the New Testament. So that's not what Paul is talking about. In 1 Corinthians, the chapter is 13. Then the Greeks had another word, philos, or phileo, which is brotherly love, friendship, associate, acquaintance, companion. So we have this idea of friendship, companion love, which is not agape, but we should love our spouses as our friend, as our associate, as our companion, but ultimately we are looking for agape. Now, this phileo type love is seen clearly in the 21st chapter of John, if you'll turn there with me. After the resurrection of Christ, and he dines with his disciples, and he talks with Peter. Peter's going to be the spokesperson for the disciples, and he's going to lead the charge for the gospel of Christ, and Jesus has some questions for him. In John chapter 21, let's begin together at verse number 15, so we can see this agape and phileo in this text. So when they had dined, John 21 verse 15, and so when they had dined, Jesus said unto Simon Peter, Simon, now I'm going to read this just like it is in the English text, and then I want to show you what the Greek word is. So when they had dined, Jesus said unto Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? Jesus saying, Simon, agape me more than these? That's the question. Do you love me unconditionally more than these? But Simon answers and says, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. That's not Simon's word, agape. Simon's word is phileo. I love you with a friendship and a companionship type of love, Jesus, an associate type of love. So Jesus asked him a second time. He said to him, John 21, verse 16, he saith unto him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, lovest thou me? Once again, the word is agape. Do you love me unconditionally? He said to him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I phileo thee. Lord, you know I love you as a friend. That's not what Jesus is asking him in the Greek text. Verse number 17. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Now here's a different Greek word. This is phileo. And guess what happened? Peter's grieved because he said unto him a third time, lovest thou me? And he said to him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Now what does Jesus do? Peter is grieved now because the Lord would doubt his declaration about brotherly love. So Jesus wants Peter to agape him. Peter keeps saying, I phileo you. And now Jesus goes back and say, well, do you really phileo me? And Peter got grieved about it. So we got this Eros and we got this phileo in our Greek text. And then we have what Jesus was asking Peter in the first two questions, the first two times, agape. And what does agape have to do with? Jesus is asking him essentially, do you have a concern, a deep concern for my well-being? Because if you do, you will feed my sheep. See, if a shepherd is just a hireling, when there comes something to take advantage of the sheep, he's going to run because he has no vested interest in the sheep that belong to another person. Jesus is saying, do you have a genuine concern for my well-being? If you do, you'll feed my sheep. And I want you to note, agape in the New Testament is a fatherly love that God has for us as human beings. And in Scripture, agape is the highest form of love. And it's contrasted with Eros and phileo. People lose sexual desire. People lose friendships and they just tend to vanish or move away. But agape love, unconditional love, is everlasting. That's what Paul wants the church at Corinth to know in 1 Corinthians 13. That is what we should understand about the way we should love our spouse. The word phileo is used about 53 times, 53 to 55 times in the New Testament. And the word agape is used 253 times in the New Testament. And agape In its verb form, agapo is used for the love that God has for his people. Romans 5 in verse number 8. But God commended his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. When Jesus was asked of the lawyer, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus responded in Matthew chapter 22 and verse number 37. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and all thy mind. That word love is agape. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That love is agape. And note, the word used in each of those instances is not Eros and it's not Phileo. It's agape. And Jesus says this as he concluded it in Matthew 22 and verse number 40. He says, on these two, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind. Love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two hang all the law and the prophets. And in John 3:16, the verse that is described as the golden text of the Bible and also sometimes summarizes the gospel message. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. This is the word love, agape, that moved God to send his only Son to die for the redemption of the sin of the entire world. So we see that when we look at this, agape, we're not looking at some friendship type love or some erotic type love. We're looking at a love that has the highest regard for the well-being of another person. That's where we have to be in our marriage relationships, because the two have become one. No man never ever hated his own flesh. She's a part of you. You should have a genuine interest in her well-being, because your well-being for her is a well-being for yourself. Now I want us to look at and let us learn how to love, what love is, and what love does. Now I want you to go back to 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Let's start at verse number 4. He says, charity, that's love, suffereth long. So, love is long suffering. And the verb means to have patience in respect of persons. So when we're talking about long suffering with our spouse, we're talking about suffering long. Now, what does this divine love cause the husband to do? It causes the husband to love the unlovable, sometimes unlovable. Why? Because that's what we see in God. See, love is the key. Love is the foundation that we're working from. We can't tear that foundation up if we want the building to be well constructed, if we want the marriage to be well constructed, we got to build on the foundation of love. So, what does this long suffering do? You know what that long suffering has to do sometime, my friend? It looks beyond the person and the way the person is acting. It continues to look at what she is. And what is that? Your wife. That's what agape causes you to do. The long suffering causes you to do. Now let's think about the failings of love. We have what was called unrequited love. And what is that? It's a one-sided love that is not reciprocated. In other words, you're loving and you're not being loved back. That's what long suffering does. It bears even in a love that's not being reciprocated. And why? Because we're dealing with how we ought to love our spouses. And we can't get away from Ephesians chapter 5. Let's go back there and visit it again. And verse number 25. Ephesians 5 in verse number 25. I want you to look at this with me, if you will. Ephesians 5 in verse number 25. We know it by heart. Husbands, love your wives. How? As Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. So what is our barometer? What is our standard by which we ought to love our wives? The way that Christ loved the church. Is Christ long suffering to the church? Why, certainly. And as a husband, you got to be long suffering with your wife because Christ is the standard. Even in unrequited love, when it's not reciprocated, perhaps they will change. Now, one of the most pitiful pictures of unrequited love is seen in the book of Hosea. God does something. And God was loving his people. And his people were not loving him back. And God shows this by giving Hosea a command to marry a wife of whoredoms. I want you to turn me to the book of Hosea. The chapter is 1 and verse number 2. Hosea chapter 1 and verse number 2. The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms. For the land hath committed a great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he says, go and marry a harlot woman. Now we know ultimately he's talking about his relationship and how it is between him and the children of Israel. And he's still married to them. They're still in covenant relationship with one another. So what does Hosea do? Look at Hosea chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. Hosea 3, verse 1 through 3. Then said the Lord unto me, go yet, love a woman, beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel. Get that? According to the love of the Lord, according to the children of Israel. And here's our barometer. We got to love our wives even as Christ has loved the church. What has the church done to Christ? God has been long-suffering. We have to be long-suffering. Yet an adulteress according to the love of the children of Israel toward the children of Israel who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. He said, I love them, but they turn to other gods. Verse 2. What did he do? So I brought her to me for 15 pieces of silver and for a homer of barley and a half homer of barley. And I said unto her, thou shalt abide with me for many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. What is he saying? I want you for me. I don't want you with anybody else. I've gone out and brought you in into my comfort of where I am to be with you. And I want you to be faithful. Look at Hosea 2 in verse number 7. But the text says, she shall follow after other lovers, but she shall not overtake them. She shall seek them, but they shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better with me than now. Even after she rejected him, he will provide a safe haven for her. Even after Israel rejected God, he provided a safe haven for her. Why? Because God was long-suffering. Look at verse 5 of this text. Hosea 2:5. For their mother has played the harlot. She has conceived them that had done shamefully, for she said, I will go after my lovers that give me bread and my water, my wool and my flax and mine oil and my drink. In spite of Hosea's love for his wife, Gomer, she gone back into a lifestyle of whoredom, adultery, and harlotry. And God tells him to go and to marry a woman like this. Long suffering is what, my friend? It's in the heart of God. 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, but is long suffering to us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come unto repentance. This kind of patience, or long suffering, is the characteristic of God. This Greek word for long suffering has two words: macros, which is long, and thumos, which is anger. So what do we have here? Long suffering endures the irritants without allowing one's anger to lash out in retaliation. My friend, that's long suffering. That's the graciousness of God. Exodus 34 and verse number 6. He's slow to anger, abundant in loving kindness and truth. And this grows out of God's covenant relationship with his people. Back then, Israel, with us today. God kept coming back, kept finding a way to restore Israel and to keep loving him. That's why I wonder about some of these relationships that we see today. What is it about irreconcilable differences? Have you ever studied God and his people? You don't see this concept with God. This is something man has come up with. God wanted to reconcile even this. Yes, we know that the grounds for adultery, and the only one, the grounds for divorce rather, is adultery, the only one. But that does not mean that we have to get a divorce because adultery was committed. God didn't divorce Israel because they committed adultery and went after other gods. That was not an irreconcilable difference from a long-suffering God. Gomer's lack of love for Hosea is a picture of God's people's lack of love for him. We're going to look at this further on next week as we look at what love is, and we're dealing with right now that love is long suffering. It suffers long. That's a character trait of the God of heaven. If we're going to be godly, we've got to be long suffering. My friend, what if you're not a Christian? You can become one by hearing the gospel, believing with all of your heart, repenting of your sin, confessing Christ as the Son of God, and being baptized for the remission of sin. The Lord will add you to the church. And if you live a faithful life unto death, God will give you a crown of life. God agape us, loved us unconditionally in the person of Jesus Christ. Let us have agape in our marriages, and let us look at the long suffering of God and institute that in marriage as well. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to come to study another portion of your word. We thank you so much for your love that you exhibited in the person of your Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sin. That should be with those of our marriages, dear God. Watch over us, and may we take these precepts, add them to our marriage and our lives, that we may be the husband and wife that you would have us to be. It's in Jesus' name we do pray and ask it all. Amen.